Hello, and welcome to this episode of Musically Cogitating, a podcast about the relevance and importance of living in contemporary music of all kinds and about how that music impacts yours and mine everyday life. I am your host, Ciyadh Wells. Again, I know I say this at the beginning of every episode, but I really mean it. Thank you so much for joining me here today, for listening, for following the podcast on social media, for supporting and doing all that. It really means a lot to me, and I'm really grateful for your time and attention and for your love and all of that stuff. So if you're enjoying the show, please subscribe on your podcast player of choice. And if you enjoy even more than that, please share it with a friend, as that really helps me to make the show better and also to get more people connected to the things that we're talking about. You can buy a sticker because they are perfect. They are awesome for any kind of place where you put stickers. I'm not a person who puts stickers on my electronics or things like that, but I put them on like other things, and I just think the stickers are cool. So buy one if you're interested. They will be linked in the description of this show. In true series fashion, I'm going to continue talking about exploring musical careers, and this episode is going to be about teaching. Now, this is less of an exploration of teaching, as I've been teaching for quite a while, and more of just a cogitation, if you will, on what it is like to be a teacher of music, of an instrument, and of things like that. I've been teaching for quite a while, and let me tell you, it's been a very wild ride, and I've enjoyed it. It's something that I see as part of a full career, and maybe not an entire career, but we'll get into that. I'm super fortunate to have had a lot of really positive experiences with music teachers, but I've also had some not so positive experiences, if you know, you know. And that has really influenced the way that I teach and what I hope to be able to give to my students in return. I think it's a great privilege to be able to be a teacher. And I think a lot of people, sometimes maybe myself included even, take that for granted. A lot of people have had good experiences, and a lot of people have had bad experiences, like I said, because a lot of teachers, they're not really that interested in what they're doing. And you know, teaching comes in a lot of shapes and sizes. I've been really fortunate and privileged to be able to learn music outside of school. So I was in private music lessons for many years, doing many things. And you know, like, what a great privilege and honor that is to have someone who is building that relationship with you in music and helping you on that journey. And it's a really beautiful thing. And a lot of people will ask, you know, do I really need a teacher to learn music? And the answer is no, you don't. But having a teacher makes it a little bit easier. And I think as we go through things and we go in our journey and we decide that we want to pursue it further and we want to learn more, we will have someone who has taught us in a way. It might not be that you learned in a private lesson setting, but it might be that you've watched this person's series of 150 YouTube videos and they've taught you, you know. So Whether or not, you've ever talked to that person or gained any feedback from them is one thing, but they've taught you and you've learned from them. And the biggest thing that I believe that lessons or any kind of more formal, and I'm using formal loosely here, but any more formal music teaching gives you is feedback. And we talk about that a lot. It's not so much that you can't figure out what to do. It's more that someone can, when you figured it out, they can help you make it better by telling you, Nate, maybe, you should do it this way. Or, yeah, that's good. Maybe it's that they're there for that positive reinforcement and motivation and things like that. So, of course, I am biased. I am a teacher, and I want people to hire me because that is part of how I make a living as an artist. But yeah, it's not a requirement, but I will encourage anyone who is thinking about learning an instrument or learning a skill and is wondering, how can I get better at this? I encourage you to really seek out help and to really think deeply about, what is it that you want to get from that person? Because not every teacher and not every student are right for each other. We've all seen and maybe even experienced some situations where the student and the teacher were just not the right fit. And, you had to keep kind of rubbing up against those things until the relationship was over or the lessons ended or whatever. But yeah, think about, what is it that you want to get out of the experience? And maybe sometimes you don't need a teacher, but maybe what you need is a mentor. So a little bit of a guide and someone who can help you. And I know plenty of people who take lessons, and maybe, I've even done this myself, where you take lessons with someone less because of what they can offer you technically from the instrument, in my case, but maybe what they can do to support your growth as, as a person, as a mentor. I've had several students who I thought, were far beyond their need to have me as a teacher, but, they just enjoyed our time together and I enjoyed my time with them. And we were still able to really each get something out of that experience. So I would say, yeah, teaching and taking lessons and being a part of that whole kind of, process is really important and interesting. Of course, I'm speaking from a place of privilege in that not everyone has access to lessons or to teachers, to, websites and YouTube and things like that. So this is very much from my perspective and my lived experience. But, that is, like I said, my perspective and my lived experience. My journey to becoming a teacher was heavily influenced by, of course, the teachers who I mentioned. And, in my first 1 or 2 episodes, I talked about like my musical journey and I talked about my piano teacher. I had a great choir teacher from 3rd grade to 12th grade. Cause yes, I was in choir for a really long time. I had a really wonderful guitar teacher kind of like in the second part of high school who was really influential and helped me become where I am. And, shout out to my mom, who was also a great teacher, who was a choir director and who was my 2nd grade classroom teacher. And I had a great band director in middle school, because that was when I did band. I did band in high school for a little bit, and, we'll move on from that. But one thing about all these teachers is that they had really different styles of teaching. And then on the flip side, one thing that they all had in common and really taught me and showed me was that you have to love music if you want to be a music teacher. And if you are a teacher who loves music, just really loves music, then you will be a better teacher. But you can tell when someone is teaching music, or anything for that matter, and they don't really love it. It comes through in their teaching. It comes through in how they interact with their students, and in what you might assume some really, really negative ways. And so what I learned from a really young age is that you have to love music, and you have to love teaching as well, because I think there are some people who love music but don't love teaching, but end up teaching, and that is, of course, a recipe for disaster. So you have to really love what you're teaching if you're going to be a great teacher. And I think, fortunate for me, I people tell me that I'm an okay teacher, so I'm gonna go with that. But I really, really love music, and so I hope that helps me to be a better teacher. I was taught to be a teacher. I don't think that I came out of the womb a teacher, a maestro, a scholar of sorts. No, I think all teachers need teachers. And you may or may not know, but I have a bachelor's degree in music education with a concentration in choral music, because that's what the school that I went to maybe do. And it's fine. In hindsight, it was one of the best decisions that could have ever been made for me and on my behalf. But people like to call me like a unicorn, and I don't like it when people do that. Don't call people unicorns. You can call, their experiences special or something like that, but don't call people unicorns. I'm not a fake horse with a horn on my head, but people will call me that because I have this music ed degree and I like to play guitar, and my current job, as I like to call it, is in arts administration. So I have this kind of varied and wide array of experiences for somebody who is of the age that I am. And so ultimately the way that I learned to teach is because I had teachers and I have a degree. And I think that this degree was really integral to my success in the classroom as a teacher, but also in the private lesson kind of way of teaching. And there are hot debates about the necessity of a performance degree versus a music ed degree. As when you get a music ed degree, it's kind of thought or assumed that you will go into public school education or classroom teaching, and that was not really what I thought my future was going to be anyway. But I still did the degree, and I think of course I said it's been a great thing. I will say that I don't think it really matters, but I do think that teacher training, even for someone who may never teach a classroom, but who may only ever teach in a private setting, is really, really important. And, pedagogy classes for students who are performance majors don't do this job, at least in my experience. And I have a concentration in this in my master's as well, like applied string pedagogy. And I've taken some string classes in my doctorate and everything, and I don't think the classes were very good. So I think that the best bet is for people who are interested in teaching to find a way to have a teacher to be taught, and to take some education type classes. I think this also shines a light into a conversation that I see a lot on Twitter, and that's because I spend far, far too much time there. But, on Twitter and other places where there is room for capital D discourse, there's a light often being shined on academia about how you're not really required to have any teaching experience to become a professor who is a teacher. And some people, so this is how it'll go. Some people will become TAs without any prior experience, not have a great mentor. They will get their doctorate and then go teach. They will get a professorship job without ever having been trained or taught how to teach, how to receive feedback, how to give feedback, how to plan, how to improve, how to do all of that stuff. And it really, really shows. And that's an unfortunate situation, because I think we do have the power to change that, but we all know why that's not going to change. We do have to do better, though. because there are a lot of really deeply problematic and traumatic experiences in and outside of these classrooms. And I think some of that, not all of that, but I think some of that could be mitigated with better training and accountability for teachers. Now, I'm not saying that teachers shouldn't have tenure or that they don't deserve it or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that people need better training and they need better teachers if we're going to expect for them to be teachers. And this experience that I just kind of laid out for you is how it goes in music too. You know, it's kind of strange. And it leads into this conversation that we often have about teaching versus performing. And there's this whole thing in the music and the arts community about teaching and performing. And there's this saying that's, those who can't do, teach. And I have had many people say this to me, basically telling me that I wasn't a good enough guitar player so that I could be a really good teacher. And that line is basically used to deter new or, performance majors or people who were just new to the industry and the career. It is to deter them from pursuing a performance career because their, quote unquote guru, maestro, teacher person said that they were not good enough. And so this does manifest in the music school setting. So the idea is that a bunch of first year performance students will come in, they'll start school, they'll be so energetic, and then their teachers will spend the year breaking them down, saying that they are not good enough. And then they switch to music ed majors because, right, those who can't do, they teach. And it is a thing. It is a really unfortunate thing. And I love how they say, those who can't do, teach. But they're also teaching you as if, they are exempt from that same kind of thought pattern or process. So it's really, really strange. And what they're really saying is that they don't think that you're good enough to be a performer or that you're good enough to potentially teach college. So go teach K-12 without thinking that, oh, wait, like some people might actually enjoy teaching and they might want to actually pursue that. And they may have never wanted to pursue performing as a career. And that's totally fine. Being a music ed major is not a fallback. Being a teacher is not a fallback career. Teaching is an art, and it is something that people should treasure and put time and effort and thought and energy into. A lot of people say, those who can't do teach because they're miserable, because they don't want to be teachers and they never thought about any of the other possible jobs that they could have. And so they become teachers. They don't like music. They don't like teaching, and they're miserable, and they pass that on to their students. I'm not projecting here, but this has definitely been projected on to me. There are people happy teaching kindergarten music. For the time that I did that during my student teaching, I really enjoyed it. I like teaching general music. It's not what I want to do every day for the remainder of the time that I'm going to be a working and contributing person to society. But, I enjoyed it. It is fun. And the people who are there, who are doing that, they're having fun. It is not because they didn't want to be performers. It is not a fallback career. It was a choice. It is something that they decided that they wanted to do and that they can excel at. And so I want you to think about that when you see someone who is a teacher teaching any kind of thing. They didn't do that because they weren't good enough. They did it because that was what they wanted to do, and that was what they enjoyed. And so for a while, I did drink the Kool-Aid, right? I thought that, maybe I'm not going to be a performer person or whatever. And so maybe I need to, really lean into this music ed thing and go get this degree in conducting. And it was all this stuff. And I ended up not getting that degree. And that was a great decision. But, I drank the Kool-Aid for a while because I was a young, potentially aspiring professor. And, part of the academy, as we call it, capital A Academy, the idea is that the academy produces more people who are going to be in the academy, even though it shouldn't really be that way. But their job is to train you to think that you will one day want to do this. And that's just how it works. And that's not necessarily a positive thing. It's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's just something that we need to better acknowledge as people who are training teachers, who are training musicians. Deciding that you want to be a teacher and pursuing that is not a fallback. It is a deliberate career choice, a career in which you can have meaningful, positive experiences and contribute to the world. So I just want to say, for anyone who is thinking about becoming a teacher or maybe even a coach of some sort, it's not a fallback career or anything like that. It is a necessary part of how we share and grow our art and our craft, but it is not a fallback. I've had the pleasure and, again, privilege of teaching quite a bit in the time frame that I've been kind of pursuing this more intently or more directly. And so I student taught in my music ed degree for it was a whole year. It wasn't the whole year every day, but it was a whole year. And so I did choir and then general music, and then I've taught private lessons. So I've taught guitar, bass, voice. I thought that I could be a piano teacher, and that didn't work out, so don't worry. I don't really teach piano anymore, but I can also teach you ukulele, and that's a lot of fun. I've taught in music stores and music schools and churches. I was an adjunct professor for a year, which was a really interesting year in my life. And I was a teaching assistant at a university where I taught class guitar when I was doing my doctorate. I'm getting closer to being done with, but when I was doing my coursework, and it was a lot of fun, and I enjoy teaching a lot. And I think teaching is a really satisfying career, and that's why I've decided to do it. But it's not the only thing that I want to do. Teaching is nice, and it will always be there because people will always need to learn. People will always want to grow. People will always be on a journey. They will always need feedback, and because they'll always want to get better. And I'm never going to stop teaching. It's just that now, instead of being the primary part of what's on my plate, it is a slice of the pie, so to say. And I think that my future in teaching and is going to be that, and it could change. I could record this episode now in 2021, and in 10 years from now, I could be a professor somewhere. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But this, what I'm doing now, teaching wise, is pretty minimal. I was teaching at a alternative school. We'll call it that. It's not actually what it is, but I was teaching there, and that was interesting. Of course, the private thing, and it's just a part of what I do, but it's not the only thing that I want to do, mainly because I have these large artistic projects and I enjoy the admin type thing. So but teaching is and will always be a part of my practice as a teaching artist, but it is also just an artist type person. Thanks to those who submitted questions for this episode. You can always ask me a question anytime, and I try to, the week or 2 weeks before I am gonna share an episode, I try to always put up a post on social media asking people for the questions. And so these were kind of a few of the questions that I got that I just want to kind of quickly run through. Someone asked, do you need a teaching degree? And the answer is no, but you should have some type of training. And again, that training is flexible. Like, you get to decide what that is. If you're going to be, a K-12 music teacher, then yes, you need a teaching degree or you need a teaching certification, depending on the state or whatever here in the United States, but it's different everywhere. But do you need one? No, but you need some type of training. You need feedback. You need a way for people to show you how to be a better teacher. Can you make money? Teaching was another question that I got. And yes, teaching is a viable career option that you should only do if you want to do it. Again, I will say that again. You should only become a teacher if you want to. If you don't want to, don't do it. It's not going to be worth it. It's not going to be fun. You will not like it. A follow-up kind of question, a similar question is, should I become a teacher if I'm not sure what I want to do? I just said no. And while I still agree with my no answer, I think you should try it out for a very short period of time. And if you don't like it, be honest with yourself, be honest with the student, and then let it go. You will not be happy. You will not be miserable. And you will create a lot of bad experiences for your students. And that's going to be on you. If you were doing it and you know you didn't want to, but you just kept doing it because you're like, I need a salary. And I get it. We live in a society that requires us to have money to survive, to exist. There's an exchange of goods and services. But there are other goods and services that you can exchange as an artist that do not involve teaching. And so I am going to encourage you to pursue that if, you're not really sure, or if you taught, you don't like it, you find something else to do in music and art. It's still possible. And last question that I got was, how do I become a teacher? Well, you teach, you take feedback from others, especially your students, ask them, are you enjoying? Is there a way that I can help you? Can I be better? And take what they say. Be honest. Prepare, learn, study, grow. That's how I think you become a good teacher. A lot of people get started in teaching because they don't know what else to do. And then they get into it and they kind of enjoy it. And then they get kind of consumed with creating little mini-me's or copies of themselves that they hope in the future will bring them some sort of acclaim or career. And I've noticed this from a friend who was like, you don't really care, if your students do competitions or, go to school or whatever. And it's like, no, I actually don't. And maybe this makes me a terrible teacher, but I don't care what my students achieve in the eyes of other people. I care that they are happy in this art. I care that they enjoy it. I care that they continue to be artists, to pursue art in whatever way that is beneficial for them. I think you can still pursue a career in the arts and decide that it's not going to be your only career, but it can be part of a career. And that's fine too. I want my students to be successful in whatever way that they want to be. And I am there to help and to serve that mission and that goal. So I'm not worried about my future students going on to college and winning competitions and doing all of these things so that they can create a name and give me a career. No, what I am worried about is that, like I said, they are happy, healthy individuals who are continuing to make art because it is what they want to do. I will have been a successful teacher if that is what happens. And if some of those other things happen, that's cool, but that's not the focus. I'm not trying to create people who make the same kind of art that I do necessarily. I am just trying to help guide them, to give them the tools and techniques that they need to do what they want to do. And so those are my thoughts on teaching, on exploring the career, the art of teaching, as some people like to say. Of course, as you can probably tell, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I've been thinking about it a lot, and it's something that I encourage more people to think about and to be talking about, because enough people, in my opinion, are not having enough conversations often enough. Now, that doesn't mean that people aren't talking about it. I know they are. But, they're not asking me. So in my world, they're not talking about it. I'm just kidding. Since this is a show about music, I wanted to recommend, a little earbud for you today. And this week's recommendation is a new song by JoJo, which is called Creature of Habit. And, I'm so glad that JoJo is back. I mean, she's been back for a while, right? Like a while. But she's been putting out a lot of new stuff recently, even if it's just singles and not a full album. But, anyway. It's just been really great. And I have really enjoyed, a lot of the things that she has been putting out. So I would definitely recommend listening to that song. It'll be in the Spotify playlist that is in the show notes. Of course, you can follow the podcast, and you should be following the podcast on social media. And you can check on the website where every once in a while I post some blog posts that are kind of like companions to the episodes, and then some other music related stuff. The newsletter is going to be coming out in a few weeks, so you can subscribe to receive some additional and bonus content for the show. And if you are liking the show, if you made it this far in the show, I would really appreciate it if you give the show a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps me to know if you are enjoying the show and how I can improve it. And it also helps other people, your friends or not, to find the show. And if you'd like to support the show even further, you can buy a sticker because they are awesome. That's all I have for you today. I really appreciate you listening, exploring careers in the arts, in music with me. And we will be back in another 2 weeks for the next episode of the Musically Cogitating Podcast. Until then, bye-bye.